Hey everybody. Okay, so there's no point in waiting any longer to do this. Things are not going to significantly change between now and the start of the season. So it's time. This is going to be a big video. Season predictions for the 2018-19 season in the NHL. We're going to go through all four divisions and try and figure out where teams are going to finish, who's going to make the playoffs, who isn't, and if you've been following this channel for any length of time and you saw my predictions for last year and then my playoff predictions, you know that I'm probably wrong about a good amount of teams, but predictions are predictions and we'll just have to wait and see how they turn out. So I'm going to start with the Atlantic Division first, because the Atlantic Division I feel like I have a much better grasp on than all the other divisions. Actually, the Atlantic Division, I think, is the only division I actually have any sort of a grasp on at all. So, we're starting up here with the Atlantic, and the winner of the Atlantic Division this year, again, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're the best team. I think they're the most complete team in the league, probably have the best roster in the league, and are my Stanley Cup favorite going into this season. Second, Toronto. Toronto Maple Leafs is, as much as I hate their defense and think their defense is a huge problem, I don't think that is going to be as big of a problem in the regular season as it will be in the playoffs. Toronto finishes second, I think, and obviously a very, very good season for them, at least in the regular season. We'll see if they can fix that defense before playoff time. Third, Boston. Bruins surprised everyone, including me, last year with how good they were. I don't think anyone expected them to be a 112-point team. I know I certainly didn't, but I think they finished third this year. I think some of their moves this offseason were good. I really like Chris Wagner. I think John Moore is a good addition to that defense. But they lost Anton Hudobin and replaced him with Yaroslav Halak, who I don't think is much of an upgrade. And I have questions about this team, and I don't know if they can prove everyone wrong 2 years in a row. And they really this year wouldn't be proving everyone wrong because there are expectations now. There weren't very high expectations last year for Boston. There are now. So I have questions about that team. Also, they're in a very tough division, where this division there are 4 good teams and 4 bad teams. It's very blatant and very obvious to me that the top 4 teams are very good and the bottom 4 teams are very bad. So Tampa Bay, Toronto, Boston, and the last team that's a good team, the Florida Panthers. They'll finish 4th. And I think they make the playoffs this year, so I'm going to put a star next to all 4 of these teams because I think they are all playoff teams. So there's your 4 playoff teams from the Atlantic, meaning only 4 from the Metro are going to make it this year. The last few years it's been 5. I don't think that continues. I think we get 4 and 4 in the East this year. Alright, so there's the top 4. Now, the bottom 4 non-playoff teams, they're all, I think, far off from being playoff teams. The worst is obviously the Ottawa Senators. So I'll put them in here. Ottawa absolutely stinks. So they're going to finish 8th. The other 3, 5 through 7, I think you could put any of the 3 remaining teams in any of those spots and it would make sense. I'm really not sure where to put them. I think it would make sense. I'm going to say, this is really hard. 5th, I have no idea. It could be Montreal, it could be Detroit, or it could be Buffalo. I really have no idea. Is Buffalo going to improve that much? They have a real goaltender now, presumably, assuming Carter Hutton can play that well as a starter. Let's say things go really well for Buffalo this year. Rasmus Dahlin is a stud. Casey Middlestat comes in and is incredible offensively. Sam Reinhart and Jack Eichel are healthy and play full seasons and play to their potential. Let's say things go really well for Buffalo. There's your 5th place team. this probably won't end up happening, but screw it. Buffalo finishes 5th. Finally, they're not a playoff team yet, but the rebuild finally starts to show some good things coming out of it. There's some good things going on in Buffalo. Let's say they finish 5th. Put Montreal in 6th. Carey Price has a better year. Their defense is still garbage. They still struggle to score goals, but Carey Price has a better year. Montreal finishes 6th. 7th, Detroit. No Henrik Zetterberg probably, so that's a loss. Some good pieces in Detroit, but no saviors in Detroit. They finished 7th. So there's your Atlantic Division. Tampa Bay, Toronto, Boston, and Florida all make the playoffs. Buffalo, Montreal, Detroit, and Ottawa do not. Over to the Metro now. Who's going to win the Metropolitan Division? This is a tough division to do because I think a lot of these teams are pretty close together. It's not going to be Washington because I'm expecting a Stanley Cup hangover from Washington this year. I think they're going to struggle the first couple months of the season. They'll get it back together around Christmas time, and then from there on out they'll be fine, but I think they're going to have a rough first couple months. So I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins the division. So Pittsburgh finishes 1st in the Metro this year. Philadelphia finishes 2nd. And now that is completely dependent on Philadelphia's goaltending and if they can keep the puck out of their net. But they do, I think, have the talent to be one of the top teams in the East. And with JVR back there scoring goals, that young defense that really produces well offensively with Provorov and Gostisbehere. I think Philly finishes 2nd as long as they get halfway decent goaltending from one of their goalies. 3rd, Washington. So Washington has a rough start to the season, gets it together in the second half, and finishes 3rd in a very good division. And then 4th, last playoff team, who's going to get it? I'm going to say Columbus. Just their defense core is very, very good, and they have Sergei Bobrovsky in net. So that's good enough for Columbus to make the playoffs. Barely, but make the playoffs. All right, that leaves New Jersey on the outside looking in after making it last year. I think New Jersey finishes 5th. Carolina finishes 6th. The Islanders finish 7th. And the Rangers rounded out with the last place finish. They're a rebuilding team. They know they're a rebuilding team. They're not going to make the playoffs, and I think that they're going to be active in making moves and trying to acquire young players and draft picks. So they're going to finish last this year. So your playoff teams: Pittsburgh, Philly, Washington, and Columbus barely. And those will be your 4 playoff teams from the Metro. All right. So there's the East. Western Conference now. Central Division. This is tough to do because there's no bad teams in the Central Division. I could see any of those 7 teams in the Central making the playoffs. I really could. So this is a really, really tough one to predict. Let's see, who's going to win? St. Louis made so many great moves. Is that enough to win the freaking whole division, though? Oh, man. Can Nashville score enough goals? We know Nashville has an incredible defense. Can they score enough goals to win the division? Does Winnipeg win the division? Even though I'm a little worried about their second line center spot. Even without Stastny for most of the first part of last year, that was a deadline deal. They were fine without him. This is really, really hard in the Central. All right, I'm gonna say Winnipeg wins the Central. So Winnipeg's your top team in the Central Division. Man, I feel like so many people are saying that it's just not gonna happen. So if Winnipeg wins it, I'm gonna. Jake Allen is such a question mark. I could presumably put St. Louis as winning this division with all the offseason moves they made, but Jake Allen is such a question mark. I just don't know. All right, St. Louis is second. Say Jake Allen does play well. St. Louis finishes second, which leaves Nashville third. So there's your top three. That leaves Minnesota probably in fourth. Dallas behind them. Colorado drops off this year after a really good and shockingly good season last year, and Chicago's still the worst team in that division, and I think they are. So there's your Central: Winnipeg, St. Louis, Nashville, Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado, and Chicago. Oh man, this is such a hard division. Alright, so your playoff teams, you might get 5 playoff teams out of the Central this year. Winnipeg, St. Louis, Nashville, and Minnesota are guaranteed, I think, playoff teams. Dallas could squeak in there as the second wild card, and I would not be surprised to see that. Let's get back to that. I'll say 4 for sure, and then we'll go and look at the Pacific and go back to see if we're going to get 4 playoff teams out of the Pacific, or if Dallas is going to snag that and have 5 teams from the Central. Pacific. Alright, Pacific is another pretty tough division to predict, but I feel like I know the worst 2 teams and the best team. So the best team that's going to win the division is the San Jose Sharks. That's my prediction. San Jose wins the division. They're just so solid up and down the lineup. Evander Kane there for a full season can easily be a 30-goal scorer for them. I think San Jose is the best team. Your worst team is Vancouver, because I think Arizona finally is not going to finish last. They'll be a little bit better. They'll finish 7th. The rest of this is very, very difficult. Now, I've been very low on Anaheim. I'm going to put Anaheim in that 6th spot. I don't think they did anything to get better over the offseason. They're an older team. They're a declining team for sure. I have them missing the playoffs and having a very disappointing season. So, not very high on Anaheim going into this year. Second, who finishes second? Well, I think it probably comes down to either LA or Vegas, and I'm going to say Vegas. LA is so dependent, their season is so dependent this year on what Ilya Kovalchuk does. If he's still a 30-goal scorer, then LA could maybe win the division and certainly could finish second. If Ilya Kovalchuk scores 15 goals and is not the player that he was before he left, LA could presumably even miss the playoffs. What about Calgary? Calgary made a lot of moves this offseason, but they basically became the Carolina Hurricanes, who hasn't made the playoffs at all. So, Mike Smith and net in Calgary too is such a question mark. If he's healthy, they could be a playoff team. If he's not, they're done. That's such a question mark in Calgary. I'm going to say Calgary finishes 5th and really doesn't have a great year. Alright, that puts Edmonton up to 4th and maybe up in the playoffs. And that leaves Vegas and LA in that 2-3 spot. I guess it really doesn't matter. I'll say Ilya Kovalchuk works out, Jonathan Quick stays healthy, the LA Kings finish 2nd, Vegas comes in 3rd and makes the playoffs. So there's your Pacific Division: San Jose, LA, Vegas, Edmonton, Calgary, Anaheim, Arizona, Vancouver. You've got at least 4 teams making the playoff. Oh no, not necessarily. We could give it to Dallas. Alright, so the top 3 teams automatically make it. So San Jose, LA, and Vegas are playoffs. Now, does Edmonton squeak back into the playoffs as a number 4 wild card, or does it go to Dallas as the 5th team from the Central? Edmonton. Edmonton sneaks back into the playoffs this year. So we have 4 from each division, or at least I have 4 from each division making the playoffs, and this is what it looks like. So, first round of the playoffs. Let's see what we got if my predictions come true, which they probably won't. But let's see what we got here. we would, let's say, I would say Florida is probably better than Columbus. So Florida is the first wild card. Columbus is the second wild card. Down here, Minnesota is better than Edmonton. So Minnesota is the first wild card. Edmonton is the second wild card. Tampa Bay is probably going to win the East. So they're going to play the second. So the first round, given what I'm predicting right now, is going to have Tampa Bay versus Columbus in the first round, Toronto versus Boston, Pittsburgh versus Florida, and then Philadelphia versus Washington. I like it, except I really wish we would get a battle of Florida with Tampa Bay versus the Panthers, and then Pittsburgh versus Columbus. But I would say it's probably going to end up with Tampa Bay playing the second wild card, which I have as being Columbus, and Pittsburgh playing the first wild card, Florida, and then Toronto versus Boston for the second year in a row. That will be really, really good. And Philly versus Washington, which would also be very, very good. So overall, that'd be a pretty decent first round in the East, and I would be all over that Toronto-Boston series. That will be something else. To the West, Winnipeg wins the West, I say, ahead of San Jose. So they play the second wild card, which would be Edmonton. And then San Jose plays the first wild card, which is Minnesota. So we have Winnipeg versus Edmonton, San Jose versus Minnesota, St. Louis versus Nashville. That would be a hell of a series. And then LA versus Vegas. Again, that will be a hell of a series. So I'm really... if this ends up being the playoffs in the first round of the playoffs, I'd be pumped for this. This would be fantastic, especially those 2-3 matchups and everywhere. Those 2-3 matchups are just so good, and I would be absolutely pumped for that. All right, now another thing to look at: playoff teams or non-playoff teams from last year making it this year. There's always a bunch of them. Looking at this, I do not have a bunch of them. Florida is one, so I have Florida getting in. There's one. That stays the same. That's the only new team in the East. And then in the West, I have St. Louis getting in. They didn't make it last year. And Edmonton getting in. They didn't make it last year. So there's only 3 new teams into the playoffs. There's probably going to be more than that. So my predictions are probably already wrong. There's usually like 6 or 7 generally that of new teams that make the playoffs after missing the year before. So only having 3, that is a low number. So there's probably going to end up being more than that. But maybe, just maybe, this will be a year where everything stays pretty stable and things don't change that much. Although that has not been the case really at all in recent history. So anyway, that's what I've got for predictions. Let me know what I got wrong. Let me know what I got right down in the comment section below. And just give me your opinion, because your opinion is valued as well. So I've got Tampa Bay, Toronto, Boston, Florida all making the playoffs from the Atlantic. Pittsburgh, Philly, Washington, Columbus making it from the Metro. Winnipeg, St. Louis, Nashville, and Minnesota making it from the Central. And San Jose, LA, Vegas, and Edmonton making it from the Pacific. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.